Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Autopod Decepticast for part 2 of our discussion on the panel at TFNation last month, where Jim Sorensen and Chris McFeely revealed their presentation on Ron Friedman's original 1984 script for The Transformers the movie. We rejoin our heroes of the APDC, Aaron, Caleb, and Ryan, along with Transformers the Movie stan Mike Seibert of Mike Seibert Radio and Alexis Taylor, UK correspondent extraordinaire, with the start of Act 2 of the Transformers TFNation script Extravaganza.
Megatron must be stopped, no matter the cost.
A lot longer to tell as well.
Act 2 drags a bit for me. On Earth, the Autobots are preparing to pursue the Decepticons in the spaceships Wheeljack is building. At Autobot HQ, massive shields are built and dispatched to Earth's major cities to serve as a defense in case of the attack while they're off-planet, which that goes nowhere because they're immediately destroyed when Galvatron gets there.
And back to your question around maybe this is a little bit in the future because of the tech around the Ark, but if they can build these shields and ships that quickly, I'm sure they can make their mods to their headquarters.
I guess so.
Just as fast.
You can overlay this on the second attack on Autobot City. Basically, that's what this is.
Right.
Springer smashes Starscream and another random Decepticon together, impaling one guy onto Starscream, essentially. And he,
like a kebab?
Yeah, kinda. I like this part because Chris does some fun voices, and he says, Starscream says, "I'll boil you in your own electron fuel for this. Come back, unknot me."
He does do a great Starscream impression.
It's not as good as yours.
Shut up. I don't have a Starscream impression. Sometimes the real Starscream comes by the show. Also.
Starscream later calls Galvatron, who basically hangs up on him, and Starscream says, "But wait, I'm still interlocked with lesser mechanisms."
That got a good laugh from the crowd.
It's true, and this is where I'm saying I really like Starscream in this one. But I mean, he just feels the same as Starscream overall. Overmatched, the Autobots are forced to abandon the headquarters and scatter to the four winds. This is where stuff starts to get super complicated, because they split into like 3 groups, I think.
I kind of sort of drifted away at this point, because it becomes overly complex.
It does.
What's going on. Yeah.
So, Rusty narrowly avoids a party of black Gestapo-like Decepticons searching for fugitives, and they're described as a sweep party, which is basically what becomes Scourge and the Sweeps. That's why that has that name.
Yeah,
and this bit was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the artwork for this made total sense to what we understand of Scourge and the Sweeps, which for me has always been a bit of an enigma. Why did you have sweeps? I think in the original Bob Budiansky, and I'm going to refer to my notes here, of Scourge, a most fearsome and implacable hunter-destroyer created from the wreckage of dead Decepticons, Scourge is leader of the Sweeps, a specially created wolf pack of tracker Terminators designed by Unicron to hunt down and eradicate Autobots and their human allies. Now, this from the Transformers universe for Scourge, and this is the amazing artwork that really makes sense of the idea of what Scourge was, this weird hovercraft. I described them, I think, in a text to you guys at the time, like Borg, with the red laser sights kind of going, just sort of sweeping and scanning like Terminators. That was... You can imagine that it's all gone to Nightfall now, and this is just a mountain road with these kind of like...
Totally.
Kind of really weird alien Decepticons, sweeping, terminating. Great.
sounds metal as fuck, dude. It really does. And it's kind of interesting because, you know, the sweeps just kind of become cannon fodder in season 3. They really have no personality other than to just be stormtroopers. Yeah, it's really dumb. This is cool. And one of the things you know, at the pace we're going, I don't know if we're ever going to come back around to this, but like, you know, some of the discourse on Twitter about this panel and these character designs is I hear a lot of folks throwing around, oh, well, this is better. That's better. This would have been better. That's utter nonsense because as we're finding that this material is impenetrable. It's incomprehensible, it's indecipherable, but it is interesting how like little bits and nuggets like rails or this you know, with the sweeps, there are some really cool ideas here, but that doesn't make it a quote unquote better movie.
I agree. I saw that tweet, Mike, and I completely agree. Like, there's some cool stuff in here, but I don't know, I think they're just going off of the big bananas, and it's like, that's a neat thought experiment, but you couldn't do like this. Is again unfilmable.
This is not a movie.
No, it's done. This is where I had the note, there is too much going on in Act 2.
This may be reaching a little far, but I kind of get Tolkien-esque sort of Nazgul vibes from this, the way it's illustrated and the way they talk about I
get War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
But it's a comment. It's a
and I made a note of some of the speech from these sweeps, and it was Autobot presence detected, destroy, target previously terminated, continue sweep, like Daleks or something like that. You know, I thought that for me was the coolest part of this of this thing, and made perfect sense to why Scourge is Scourge and the sweeps are sweeps in the final cut.
Magnus at this point runs some of the Decepticons over, and this is where Friedman gives a script suggestion for an alt mode, which is quote, a harvester with thresher blades, or quote, a gasoline truck with huge battering ram bumpers, you know. And so he was just throwing out ideas, I guess.
And is the idea that Ultra Magnus got this rig when he upgraded?
I don't
possibly
know, because he's not shown in vehicle mode before this. The Autobots escape under cover of a smoke screen by a bot named Kimiko.
That's another one that was
Everyone
kind of a standout,
Kimiko
right?
on the panel.
Yeah.
Which artistically was kind of a rip from one of Cup's poses, as I recall, the whole driving through the barricades.
Finish him off, Prime. Do it now.
Yeah, that's what.
That's what it was. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
A little later, Hot Rod and Tanker locate a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger-like Autobot Springer in the desert and watch as he uses his leaping power, to which he's named, to take out multiple Decepticons. So,
which you never got. You got in the comics sometimes, but you never got in the Sumbo cartoon at all. The fact that he's called Springer, and his tech spec, I think, even says he has springy hind legs, and that's what calls him why he's called Springer. It would just look fucking stupid.
Yeah.
So it was never put in.
God, that original design, though.
What?
He eats a lot of pizza.
He's a thick boy.
Thick.
Yeah.
Hey, man, representation matters.
That's where... Okay, so Springer leads the pair of the Autobots to the refinery to recruit more troops. They're attacked by Insecticons and more Decepticons on the way. Help awaits in the form of the Dinobots and the refinery's resident brainiac, Mintzlar, who's a large-headed Autobot scientist who turns into a radar truck and has invented an immuno-destabilizer field that cuts the Decepticons off from the entity's power, allowing the Dinobots to send them packing.
It felt like the crowd reacted to that.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to note on here, I think. So the Dinobots, as it is in this script, is only Swoop, Grimlock, and Sludge, which may explain to me why Snarl isn't featured in the film, that tiny little bit, but he's never featured. There's just 4 of them. So there must have been some confusion about how many Dinobots there were, or there should be.
Well,
but these 3 seem completely random.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, Swoop was created with Snarl later.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what's confusing. Slag's not in it, and Swoop is a member of basically the second run of Dinobots, so it's just weird. It's a weird combo.
And it's Insecticons that follow them.
Mm-hmm.
So Insecticons are following them, and this, whatever Mentlar rigs up, strips them of the entity's powers, and they're easily defeated. but then they mentioned in the panel that's never seen again. So
No,
this technology that could have ended it all was never referred to.
It never comes back. No, there's a lot
No.
of that where nothing comes back. Which is why they say it seems like it's just improvised. Like you're just, and again, it's a first draft.
Riffing as he goes along.
Exactly, which is what you sometimes. I mean, every writer has a different process, but a lot of writers do that, where they're just write. Then your second run through it, you connect points and stuff like that. Mindlar is described as a large Autobot with Alpha Wave style headgear, a Carl Sagan type, and very intelligent, like a super perceptor, essentially. And he has long touching fingers. And you know what that means? He knows 3 ways to finger bang.
Call back.
Fucking 5 years ago.
It just now hit me, having looked at this several times, the drawing in front of us, that the head sculpt, they did take it off of Perceptor, and even the chest looks like an homage to, and maybe even the pelvis here is an homage to the Perceptor
looks to
design.
me
a little bit.
The head looks to me like a Cylon from the show, the original show.
The top part.
Yeah, it does. And I think on the second panel, because I've seen this on Twitter, they showed an imagined vehicle form of him. Yeah, we're looking at it now, like a radar truck, and they've drawn it similar to Cut, like one of those 1970s kind of weird pickup things with a big radar dish on the front, or on the back.
So Mintlar and the Dinobots, along with their high-speed advanced scout Blur, who is the crowd loved this too, a slow-talking Jimmy Stewart sort, go on a mission into space.
I'm trying to think of a good Blur line to do a Jimmy Stewart impression.
Where's Decepticons on the tower? Decepticons in the air. Pottersville.
There's Decepticons everywhere. I don't have your money. Frank has your money.
I'm so glad we got John Machita.
I know. It is
Probably
weird.
what John
'cause
Machita sounds like now. Oh,
what's fucking strange?
Shots across the bow.
What's fucking strange though is like, I don't know what is in the water that makes everyone want Blur to talk slow, because in Five Faces, in one of the original scripts, Flint talks about wanting to change Blur to whenever he becomes stressed, he starts talking very slowly.
Woo, woo, woo.
To the point where it was filmed.
Faces.
Yeah, like to the point where it was I think it was 3, maybe Five Faces Part 3, where in its film they had to recut it because his lips are moving really slowly. It's fucking strange.
That's weird.
Anyway, in the chaos, Daniel and Ellen are forced to board the ship with Rusty, Magnus, Springer, Blur, and Mintlar as it blasts off. Hot Rod, Tanker, and the Dinobots fly alongside it. Wheeljack, RC, Blaze, and the Autobots continue to fight on Earth. So this is where I'm like, this is too much going on. There are too many moving parts. A bunch of other complicated shit happens and doesn't matter. And we're in space. The Autobots escape the Decepticons, sort of like the escape from Autobot City in the movie. And it's huge, apparently, in the script. This is one of the parts where they actually do skip over a bit of it. They say the same thing in the panel. Galvatron thinks he's killed the Autobots and heads back to Earth.
And I think in this part of the panel as well, and they've said, I think they said near the end, there was a lot of cutting backwards and forwards. So the ship's in space, and then back on Earth, and back to
Time to streamline. It'd be like if you just kept going to see what Blaster was up to in the real movie, and he's just chilling.
Which you did get in that second draft of the script, right? Yeah, because Blaster had like a resistance cell.
Yeah, he's doing like guerrilla war
Yeah.
stuff there.
Yeah.
That's
like
true.
Piers and Windcharger and some other folks. Weird.
I'll say this. The third act for me is kind of even more incoherent. You can understand it in terms of the movie, which cuts all this fat. Even though they say on the panel they streamlined it and cut out a ton, it's still very overwhelming. I don't know if it felt that way to you, Alex, when you were in the room.
He was drunk, as we know.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, it was, and this is when people started to leave the auditorium. Yeah.
Oh no!
No, I'm only joking, guys, that we're doing it. No, it was incoherent, and you know when you look back at sort of Chris McFeely's sort of tweets on this, that breaks it down. You even see from those tweets it kind of go here and then there, and there was one part which I guess we'll get to where they're in space and they said there's a good number of pages of the script of this space battle, which would have been the space battle we saw with, you know, Cyclonus transform and attack, and they dazzled them with flares in this script. And I think Cup said, we're in graded polarities. You know, there's bits of that are in, but apparently it went on for pages.
Yeah. Which this is where he, Chris, in the tweet thread, cuts to Act 3. We open with Hot Rod's group landing on an alien moon. Rod rescues Tanker from a robot squid. So that's, you know, essentially like when he rescues Cup. Magnus's group makes it to the planet Unicron, but a brainwave tractor beam forces them to crash on a moon. So Unicron has moons in this script. The entity summons Galvatron, who ignores the call. You left me on red. In a variation of the universal greeting scene we all know, Hot Rod and Tanker encounter and are captured by the Sharkticons. Sharkticons have actually also captured Sludge and Swoop and are, like, taking bites out of Swoop, which seems gross.
Yeah, kind of chowing down on Swoop. And I think they said that Sludge is incapacitated or something like that.
Rusty and Daniel practice using their exosuits. Ellen refuses to let Daniel go with Rusty, Mitlar, and Blur to explore the moon they've crashed on. Mitlar removes a scale from the moon's surface to study. The entity senses the removal, making him aware the Autobots still live.
That's just so funny. He does, like, just them being there isn't
enough. Yeah, I don't know. Furious that the summons were disobeyed, the entity tortures Galvatron from afar, forcing him to leave Earth for Unicron's moon to wipe the Autobots out. The Autobots on Earth rally and push back against the remaining Decepticons. RC and Wheeljack start to get along. And I guess this is where, like...
Isn't that nice?
Isn't that nice? This, and I forgot about this, but I believe that this is in the script we read too, where this is where Hot Rod and Tanker meet their fellow captive, a rock named Granix, from Lethone, the planet of Marble. And I'm pretty sure in the script we read, this is the same thing where it's a gladiatorial style thing with rock creatures that
it is, and there's reference to Lethone, rock lords. Yeah.
Exactly.
And Lethone was in that script as well. Like, the movie did open up with Unicron attacking Lethone. It was just a different sort of attack.
Yeah,
with
they were just rock
crazy
creatures.
mist and all of that stuff.
Yeah, it was mist. That's right. The Quintessons throw Granox to the Sharkticons, and it is like basically a gladiatorial fight instead of being in a water-filled pit.
Which, why? You've got Sharkticons.
I don't know.
It seems like a miss even for a first draft, but they got it right. It's all good.
On Unicron's moon, the Autobots set a trap for the approaching Decepticons, setting up cardboard cutouts of themselves to lure the cons into range of an explosive charge.
Didn't they have that in the other script as well? They set decoys.
It was decoys. Actually,
Yeah, like-
when it was
Perceptor makes, like...
cover. Yeah.
Perceptor has a suitcase that has, like, basically their what are they called? The magic grow things, the little capsules you put in water and they grow into sponges, like of a dinosaur or whatever. It's like that. He puts these things on the ground and then they grow into like basically mindless clones of the Autobots to distract Galvatron while they go hide.
So for legislation, is that more or less stupid than cardboard cutouts?
I like it way better than cardboard cutouts. But there is some, like, precedent for this because there is an episode of, I think, season 2 where the Autobots are setting a trap for the Decepticons and they're just dressed in lab coats.
That's right.
Robots in disguise. Where did they get those coats?
Where did they get those?
RC was in the background, kind of running him up.
Also a seamstress. Also washes dishes.
Maker of sandwiches.
Back on the Quintesson planet, Grimlock arrives to flee everybody, and Hot Rod forces the lead Quintesson to probe space with his mental powers. This is where the Quintessons are still like spindly characters whose heads can fly off. And they have mental powers, and Hot Rod forces him to probe space with his mental powers for the location of Magnus's crew, and then Hot Rod and his crew leave to go there. On the moon, Magnus's team trips their trap. Rusty tries to help the Autobots fight. Rumble tries to force Daniel to watch as Dirge kills Ellen, but Daniel masters his ego, his exosuit, and saves his mom from the cons.
I love this bit as well because this is that callback to kind of, was it Scavenger that said human germ?
Human germ, yeah.
So you've got Dirge instead kind of saying something like, prepare for extinction, Earth vermin. And then having a fight with Ellen and Spike, I'll say Spike Daniel. And then Sadist Rumble turns Daniel's head like going, watch, you're too puny for us human.
It's messed up.
Watch, as your mum dies.
It's pretty horrible.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Twisted.
And I wonder if there's any relation to that where it's like on the real movie where they were saying you have to watch Daniel in a near-death experience with his father in that circumstance. Also, I don't think we noted it up top that the Coneheads are the only
That's right.
Characters from season 2 that are in this script. So even at this time, well before most of season 1 was produced, they knew Coneheads were going to exist, which is
They're obviously on the table somewhere at Hasbro Corp.
Springer, Rusty, Ellen, and Daniel reluctantly leave Magnus, Blur, and Mintlar to battle Galvatron and the other Decepticons. Their escape route leads them through a strange fog bank in a dried-out riverbed-like area where they're confronted by the Junkions, who are an eccentric tribe of Road Warrior-style robots, and apparently Wreck-Gar has a Nazi-style helmet.
I mean, it's a World War I German military helmet.
So that's not Nazi-style.
You wouldn't. To call it Nazi style is a little misleading.
He mentions it as Nazi style in the script. I'm guessing they're going for this Lemmy from Motorhead, Hell's Angels kind of type persona.
Got it.
With that.
Okay, so Friedman actually called it a Nazi style. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Gotcha.
But the illustrators for this took more of a World War I approach. Is that what we're saying?
We don't have to get into the details of that helmet. It's got a spike on the top of it.
But it does look like a
Kaiser.
That type of helmet was introduced in World
Army
War I. It was not a Nazi innovation, but I get it.
And the one thing that was with the sweeps as well, I think they were mentioned as Gestapo style Decepticon, black-clad Gestapo Decepticon hunters or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Ron Fried, who's
the
it's a
big
man of a
bad?
certain time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if this is all developed in the 2000s for the first time, they would probably be more, I don't know, like Middle Eastern garb. And I'm just saying that, you're taking from what the pop cultural baddie at the time is.
Sure.
Also, Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones, that whole...
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the 80s had quite a few callbacks to kind of
I
World War
mean,
II, didn't
if
it?
we want to go Star Wars, that's all Nazi shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Magnus, Blur, and Mintlar are killed by the Decepticons. Sensing the presence of Optimus Prime's life force, Galvatron cuts Magnus open, removes Prime's matrix, and places it in a bottle-like pendant, and departs to renegotiate with the entity. Again, the same thing we see in the second script that we talked about. But in this one, I guess Magnus, Blur, and Mintlar are all dead. Like they don't
super
come back.
dead. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because this was another one of the early tweets that I saw, and I'm like, again, I've seen this already. It's like, yeah.
Well, you're privileged, Mike, to have us have walked you through it.
That's
you
true.
and all of our listeners are definitely privileged.
That's
well,
true.
and I bet you that's where like the saw blade comes from. That's probably where James got the idea for this illustration, was remembering that there's like an actual explicit saw blade that Galvatron uses to cut open Magnus.
Mm-hmm. The Junkions take Springer and the humans prisoner, but Hot Rod's group arrives and diffuses the situation with a universal greeting. Ellen decodes a printout of data Wreck-Gar provides, revealing the entity's origin. It was created by the Junkions' ancestors, which is that I've never heard of before. So I guess that was...
So what was created by the Junkions?
Unicron.
Okay.
They're living... The Junkions live on the moon of Unicron.
Right.
In secret.
I get it.
It was supposed to be a universal protector.
Yes. The entity was built
Now,
to be a
going back
universal
to-
protector, yeah.
The universe function for Unicron was Universal Dominator. So did they switch that notion of Universal Protector to Universal Dominator? They mentioned Universal Protector, I think, in the script.
Yes.
I read this, and it
Yes.
said Universal Dominator.
I mean, they did have a
Interesting.
tendency to do the least amount of work to retcon things a little bit. So changing one word
Conservation of energy.
makes sense to me.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So the Junkions have been living in secret behind a veil of fog to be free from it because the Unicron went evil. It does have a weak spot, but the script is missing a page, so we don't know what it is.
A small exhaust port.
Yeah, that it is. It does feel very. Yeah. Galvatron attempts to break his contract with the entity by threatening to destroy the planet Unicron with a thermal charge. This is also in the script we read. The explosion has no effect, and then the truth is revealed. The entity and the planet Unicron are one and the same being.
What?
Thanks to the energy of the Earth, the entity now has the power to transform into robot mode and break the orbit it has been trapped in for generations. The tree trunks and grass on the planet's surface are but hairs on the back of its colossal hands. This is in the script where Galvatron does plant a thermal bomb on Unicron, but in our script we read, that's what gives him the energy to transform. But in this one, it's what the energy he's been sucking off of Earth that the Decepticons have been.
And also, there's a bit of an about face from Galvatron in both of the scripts and the finished film, where he does turn on the oppressor, doesn't he? He's like, right, I will. The redemption arc almost nearly happened in all of the versions with Galvatron, I think, which is a kind of Megatron-y thing to do.
Well, yeah, he doesn't want anybody to. I don't know if it's redemption as much as he just doesn't want people to control him.
Yeah, it's
ultimately.
completely selfish. Like he just wants it all.
If I can't have it, no one can.
The entity heads for Earth to finish devouring it. The Dinobots and Junkion strafe him while the others venture inside his body. Springer and Tanker battle his immune system of metallic leeches, and Hot Rod and the humans head for the weak spot at his core.
Metallic leeches, which we see in the Return of Optimus Prime Season 3.
I don't
I
remember
forgot about that. They dropped from the cave ceiling or something.
We'll get to that
I thought.
Again, it's
mid
weird.
next year.
It's weird call.
2025?
I think at this point with our schedule, we're about a year out from ending season.
Again, it's weird callbacks like that.
Yep.
Where I'm like, what kind of access do the writers have to stuff like this?
There weren't.
You
they
do-
didn't
you
have
do kind of
computers for the most part, so there wasn't a database of things for them to refer. They maybe had a library that they had to
I
go.
don't
in.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Either it was kind of some kind of psychic resonance where they all came up with this stuff.
Could be.
Or there were some of these treatments. Look, there's scripts lying around in Flint Dilley's garage or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe they were just scripts like this lying around, and they just kind of thought, oh yeah, I could extract some of that.
Yeah.
I think we see again in is it Ultra Magnus's birthday? Is that an episode coming up where again they go to somewhere and there's leeches or something that there's something like this. So it comes back a few the light poles, little creatures or those things in Megatron's chest where they all get drunk.
Yeah.
That's the thing as well.
It probably is just things that like you take bits and pieces of stuff you've like read and you're doing a new treatment on it, and it just kind of morphs and survives and
and just maybe efficiency. This is a production line of writing, so take this thing, take what's good, and make it optimize it into something
to
else.
new writers, maybe they just sort of said, well, if you come in cold to Transformers, you get the Bible.
Yeah.
And then they chuck in a few scripts or whatever lying around and say, well, here's some things to get the gist of where we're going with stuff. Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
That is interesting because I think this is also in Flint's book, but I know we talked about it, I believe, whenever we interviewed him. But he talks about how like there were scripts for the show where they'd have a writer come in who knew about the show in general, but wouldn't understand certain points. Like there was one script that I think he fell out that he had to fill in a script of his own because the writer thought that the Transformers could transform into anything. Like they could just decide to be a different form.
So yeah, he wrote a whole episode based on that.
No, I think it was just because they had to have an episode in production, so he churned one out in like a couple of days, and I think that may have been what became Prime Target.
Okay.
But he talks about scripts falling out, which means for whatever reason, either the writer didn't deliver on time or there was an issue with it, so somebody else had to throw a script in there.
It's bound to happen. I'm surprised it wouldn't happen more often, honestly. Why would I not be honest about that?
Reaching the opening to the core, they find it is too small for any explosive. Hot Rod senses the weapon they need. The group returns to the surface to recover Optimus's Matrix from Galvatron. He refuses and tries to destroy himself and the Matrix, which is a weird move.
Strange turn.
I don't know why
Peace
he
out,
would do
bitches.
that. Why wouldn't he just give it to him?
If I can't have it, no one can.
I guess, but he can't do anything with it. Like, it's
But then again,
useless.
neither can they. So,
But doesn't he want to destroy Unicron?
It's a weird choice.
yes.
We're debating the plot point.
It's
Of a
true.
batshit crazy
We're so
story.
close
it's
to
true.
the end.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
As we do once in a while.
I guess keep it moving.
Yeah, no,
Ellen,
for sure.
Ellen, finally getting the hang of her exosuit, surprises everyone by kung fuing the Decepticon leader into submission. Matrix in hand, the team return to the core once more, where Daniel, the only one small enough to fit into the opening, climbs in and opens the Matrix. Optimus's life force destroys the entity from within, and Galvatron is sent hurtling off into space on a piece of debris.
So I guess that answers the question. I mean, we don't need the missing page to understand. Yeah,
It's just
the
at the
weakness
core.
is the core, of,
Yeah.
And that's if you can unleash some sort of power there, then boom.
Send
Or-
Luke Skywalker in,
Yeah.
and in an impossible thing, and the weakest will defeat the biggest.
Yeah. Or the
The
Junkion
end.
said that the Autobot Matrix, which they somehow knew about, was his weakness as well. I mean, it could be any of those things, I guess. But
So, yeah, in this one, we get no Rodimus. Hot Rod takes charge of the Autobots and orders them to evacuate the entity's body, and our heroes triumphantly return to the healed, restored Earth for a victory ceremony at the new Autobot headquarters. Guess they don't give a shit about their planet not existing anymore. The end. Credits.
Wow.
We did it.
I mean, to be fair, Cybertron was kind of fucked up. Like, even like first. So, like, if this script was written after Heavy Metal War, then yeah, Cybertron is shown to be, you know, that's why they leave to go towards the Earth to begin with to get more energy. So yeah, it's kind of like, well, sorry, R.I.P.
I don't know.
There's no transformation into Hot Rod into Rodimus here. It
No.
is just Hot Rod saying to Earth. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Hot Rod isn't even. Would you consider him even like a
do we even know that he's the
central
leader?
character?
No, there's no leader. Like, basically, at this point, I mean, yeah, Ultra Magnus is dead. They're rudderless.
And who opens the Matrix? Is it Daniel? Daniel's the leader.
Ugh.
There it is.
That's what it was always.
Daniel
So-
for Destroyer. D is for
D
Destroyer.
is for Destroyer.
So what? So like, I'm just curious. Just some summation, like final thoughts on this. Just any thoughts you had. Let's go.
I've got
Alex,
a
go.
couple. Yeah, and this is it's sort of going back to kind of killing characters and everything. And one thought I had was this happened so early in the original run. They get rid of Megatron and they get rid of Prime. So did Hasbro say, well, Megatron's a gun, it's pretty goofy. You know, we rushed these toys out. We sort of said, well, guns are bad, so make him the leader. Some planes, that'll be that, and the cars are kind of the good guys. There was this decision, obviously, from this, I would assume, that they said, right, we need new characters. Our own IP, I don't know, Hasbro rather than Takara. We're reusing all this Diaclone stuff. Do we need to make our own here? But, you know, that idea that they were killing off Optimus Prime before even the toys were pretty much out on the shelves. And Megatron as well, and turning him into an Ultra Megatron, a superpowered Megatron, we'll get rid of that mold straight away. So that was my one sort of takeaway from this in terms of the toys, bearing in mind the reason for all this stuff is to shift units in multiple territories. The idea that you kill off the main two hero characters straight away, interesting, and turn them into something else, yet keep some of the other characters around, like Starscream or whatever. That's a plane they can shift. I don't know. That was really interesting for me as a takeaway point. We didn't have Wheeeee in here.
Oh,
but
I
it
didn't
was
even
mentioned
notice.
that the Dinobots befriended a junkion called Scrappo. I think it was mentioned at the panel that maybe he was a Wheeeee character. And there was something actually going back, I've just remembered it now, that at the Mentlar initial point we saw him and we saw the Dinobots with Mentlar and Blur, there was a load of text about Grimlock having problem with the word strategy. It was strategy.
Oh, yeah.
But then in the final film, at the Battle of Unicron, Grimlock does say, Grimlock needs new strategy.
Yep.
Just that word strategy. I wonder if that was, again, a little thread that was carried forward. Or maybe I'm just retconning this in my own headcanon. But there was an interesting thing there. I'm kind of thinking too deeply on this.
No, that's why we're here.
So that was my main beat of this. And yeah, it just goes on to the timing of this. But the whole thing for me, listening to the script, it just felt really abject. It didn't feel like a Transformers film. It did a cartoon, a Transformers episode. It felt like it was Battle of the Planets or some other generic science fiction story threads running through it, where the Transformers didn't really use their transformation power. It wasn't really robots in disguise. They were just Star Wars-like characters in very reductive, binary hero-villain modes. I'm glad we didn't get this.
To your point, Mike, on that, just sorry to cut you off, Alex. Just I was going to say to your point, Mike, about that of like that tying into people saying, "Oh, this would have been awesome." I think that they're putting it in the mindset of they know what the movie is, and like, here's a bunch of bananas stuff that could have been in the movie, but you don't. I don't think you know that you don't want that. Like,
right?
Yeah. I think that's fair. Go ahead, Caleb.
I'm so sorry. I was going to say I need to go back to Friedman's book because his book is called "I Killed Optimus Prime," and I need to see what he says about the decisions that were put in place for killing Optimus Prime in context now that we have seen this first draft and when the first draft came out. I've got to just as a quick aside, I'd be interesting to see what he says in his book stacks up now that this first draft is out.
I would love for you to read it and tell me what it says.
All right, that's all I was going to say.
If Friedman ever decided to listen to this podcast after we interviewed with him, I wonder what he thinks of us right now.
Yeah.
Let me throw some kerosene on that, on not just that, but also though, and I missed my opportunity to bring this up earlier when I was kind of talking about some of my more, I guess, I don't know, hot takes or what. My viewpoint on Ron Friedman is perhaps a little provocative or whatever, but I wonder, has he actually seen the movie? There is a part of me that thinks that he might not have.
I don't think he has. I don't think so.
So yeah, that was just a weird thought that just kind of crossed my mind here. But to Caleb's point, and kind of when we were talking about like takeaways here, one of my bigger takeaways is how much of the finished film is kind of in here, how there is like little bits of DNA and little little pieces that we would know. And one of the common themes is that Optimus Prime dies. Right. So that was there from jump. So like we're already saying, I wonder if Hasbro was already in Ron Friedman's ear saying like, hey, if we do a feature, this is what we want to do.
I mean, if anything, we can know that was a direct order because Ron Friedman is on the record as saying he thought it was a bad idea.
That's what he says.
And honestly, I don't disagree with him, particularly that early in the run, right? Like, I mean, they're writing
it's
this
the
thing
earliness of it.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess as a person that is a new product innovator, I know that the timeline for these things can take a long time between inception and delivery of a manufactured product. And so they're just thinking 3 years out, we're going to have to kill this thing. So let's get started on it. And that's what I don't know. It's really tough because we know that at the time they're writing this, there's still a whole lot of Diaclone toys in the pipeline that they can easily take and repackage
and I made a note here about there's people they could have killed off if it was licensing. So Jetfire was being established in the original TV at the moment. They could have made an example of him to sort of say, look, we can't use this. It's a Bandai figure. Boom, out. Kill that guy. Kill Shockwave. That was a Toyco figure or whatever. And they could have made those. They could have used this as a vehicle at this stage to kill off some of those they bought up everything, didn't they? So that Bandai didn't get it. So they put all these weird things, and they could have used this as an opportunity to say, okay, we'll make Jetfire kind of like a hero, and we'll kill him off because we don't really own the rights. That's a bit murky, and they could have done that, but they didn't. And you mentioned, I think, in the last episode about the jump starters, never appearing in the film, in the original Transformers cartoon, because I don't think they could find that there were character models drawn of them by Flora Deary, but they couldn't quite work them in because they were so odd to what was going on there. You wonder why they didn't have property that, if you think about the lead time on this, the 1985 characters coming out would have already been, the packaging would have been created for that, the bios would have been created for that. They would have had that there. We had Dirge and Ramjet and Thrust that were named in this. Right. So there was already a lot of product laid on some Hasbro table that they could have thrown into this film to kill off or not, that they didn't do. So there's some really odd choices, bearing in mind this is an elongated advert to sell some toys. Yeah. Strange, really strange.
Yeah, not to mention Omega Supreme, Astro Train, Blitzwing, all of those Diaclone toys. I mean, honestly, the list goes on. Anybody from Season 2 they knew was in the pipeline. So it's interesting that they didn't draw from that and created all these original characters at this point in time, unless they're just thinking that far ahead, like, no, those guys are covered. We've got to cover for when we run out of those molds,
Yeah, that's true, because there's no timeline for when this feature film would be eventually developed. So maybe it's like, hey, Ron Friedman, bang out a spec over the weekend, just so that we're already kind of getting the gears turning. We don't know exactly what we're looking to sell. We're not exactly knowing what we're looking to create, but just be thinking about it. And so maybe in his writer's mind palace, this is what came up. One other thing that I thought was kind of interesting, and this survives through Ron Friedman's other drafts, Blur always dies.
Did he die?
And I
remember the second draft.
Did he die in the
I
second
can't
draft?
remember.
I can't recall.
Yeah, because
he died.
Well, because when Unicron turned into robot mode, he smashes some robots against his chest, and Blur is one of them. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that this character went from being doomed to being like, well, no, this is a toy that we need to make and need to sell.
What if we put him in all of the episodes of Five Faces?
And too many episodes of Season 3. From a business perspective, why would you kill off your new robots so quickly also? They're not going to sell as well if you killed them in the movie.
I wonder what point, and maybe this has been discussed before, but at what point Flora Deary came in and kind of made, from these treatments, made the characters off the back of that, which later became toys. And that's the one bit about that opening scene with the reflector crab robot. That would have made a cool toy, but I think one thing they said in the panel, I think it was Jim Sorensen that said, anything that would have been in these scripts, Hasbro would have been sort of honor bound to kind of develop with Takara into a saleable product. So the crab bots would have had to have been made and designed, and again, I take a very functional look at this and sort of think, because these were the vehicle to sell toys, it's interesting that Blur in a treatment made its way into a figure. Hot Rod in a treatment made its way into a figure, and the sweeps. No mention of Cyclonus in this, but there's that was a preoccupation for the whole the raison d'etre behind this thing was to shift product.
And I think that probably points to, I don't want to say the lack of seriousness, that's not but I guess the earliness of this draft. They weren't committing resources to art and design at this point connected to this draft. So it probably wasn't until draft 2 when we started to get more firm accounting of the characters that they were like, okay, now let's get some artists behind this to help start visualizing it.
Yeah. So my final thoughts I just had on the script. So I thought the very early, very easy dispatching of Cybertron really sticks out, that I think was a mistake, and I'm glad they didn't do that. And focusing on Earth, I didn't really care for that. And that kind of harkens back to, well, it dovetails with my next point, which is the human characters in this draft are just too much. They simultaneously, for me, don't add any value, but do everything critical. Basically, they save the day.
Right.
Like
They kill
Daniel
Unicron.
opens the Matrix. Ellen is the one who dispatches Galvatron. And like, why not give that to an Autobot to do, which is ultimately what they do, and it's much stronger storytelling. So I don't understand why the writers got so bogged down in thinking we need these human characters, and why you wouldn't make them like what they eventually did, which was Spike and Daniel and well, I guess
which is the general trope of a lot of these things, making the human character central for kids to identify.
Yeah.
I could be Daniel. I could be that. My mum could be Ellen, or whatever that he was thinking there.
I can save.
Which,
I can
thankfully,
save
in
the
the final
day.
film, we didn't get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I and that's one thing I had a note. I think it was like in the middle of our run on Autobot City, the middle of our talk about Transformers the movie when we were reviewing it. I didn't identify with Daniel. I identified with Hot Rod
Of course you did.
because he was cool. He was the Jesse character.
Mr. Cool. Have mercy.
I think it's, but I mean, to have the kids save the day is a pretty easy go-to.
But they also still gave him that. He still saved his dad.
Yeah.
And
Even if he
grew as
would
a
have
character.
saved the day, I would not have identified with Daniel. Like,
Fair.
I just didn't care about the. I barely care about Spike.
I understand because when I'm doing the imagination, I want to be the robot. I don't want to be the kid. But
I'm already that.
I'm already there. I want to be something else. Yeah. So I can see where I'm glad that they made that pivot.
I mean, Beast Wars has no human characters, and it's great.
That's gonna be
Well,
fun.
we'll get to that.
Yeah.
allegedly.
That's all I had. Those were just my main points on the script.
I guess to me, the main thing about this is just really as an event or as a moment in sort of the Transformers legacy. I don't even know that this is a thing we knew existed or knew would ever come out, and now that it is out, it's a big deal of the moment. And I wonder how many of these sort of lost things. Like it seems like you've still got Secret of Cybertron floating out there, and we can have a conversation like this once and if that ever gets revealed. But how many artifacts are there still to be mined up that can spur these kinds of conversations?
Not only that, how many just don't exist because nobody at the time cared to keep them like around. It's the same thing, but like movies before like the 1930s, they just don't exist because nobody thought it was interesting or important to keep around. Right. Like you said, I think you said, Alex, like this is something that we're still discovering things about G1, and that's really weird and interesting.
and kind of special too. I mean, that's a special thing that, like I said at the top, 36 years later, we're still discovering things about this movie, and there's still stuff yet to be discovered. And I saw amidst some of the Twitter discourse, I think we as Transformers fans also take for granted. What did the ghost of the iconic moment show up?
Something just happened.
I think it did.
That's legit scary. Too bad we're not on video. Nobody knows what we're talking about.
My house is haunted. So what can I say?
So you live in a legit haunted house. That's amazing. Yeah. But no, what I was going to say is, like, it's amazing how we take for granted how well chronicled the stuff that we have already is because of folks like Jim Sorensen and Chris McFeely and everybody that contributes to TF Wiki and all of that. Do you think like our friends in My Little Pony fandom have it?
Same thing. I was going to say the same thing, and I think this is something that I mentioned to a few of you guys before. This kind of Transformers occupies a really strange cultural bubble that you don't necessarily, I think you don't get in My Little Pony and other franchises that has led to third-party toys. You've got your established kind of Star Wars and Star Trek, but do you get that amount of strange fandom as you do Transformers? You didn't get with GoBots. Right. I mean, there are people that love GoBots, and there was a GoBots film, there was a GoBots TV series, and everything else. But have we got podcasts of people dissecting GoBots in the same way? What is it? Is it because the writing and the animation and the toys and the play value came together in such a unique apex that this stuff probably is out there for other franchises, but no one's cared to do a Jim and Chris digging on this because isn't that.
Simon Lech made a comment. He's the he's the guy that is into collecting scripts, not only for Transformers, but also G.I. Joe and some other cartoons. And he says that the amount of Transformers material is vastly outweighs the other cartoons.
Yeah.
And he makes a point to say that there's a much greater interest.
Well, I would say, and to some extent it's starting to get more love now, but like even... Well, like He-Man and G.I. Joe, while they are loved properties, and like G.I. Joe's getting a lot more love now and stuff too, but I still don't think it's to the level, like there's not as much stuff and lore as there is for Transformers. I don't know why necessarily, but well, He-Man didn't last that long, but like we're starting to get stuff from them, but it's still not, it doesn't seem like there's as much saturation. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking through. It's always awkward to get into a gender dynamic because I don't know what I'm talking about. But when I think of from the 80s toy perspective and just culturally, it's weird that all these properties that are these pop culture juggernauts, be it comic book, Marvel, Transformers, whatever, are all centered around toys that were marketed to males. There's no... Like there's no My Little Pony stuff, like stuff that was, and maybe is it a partially that culturally women grow out of toys and let go of that kind of nostalgia in a way that for whatever reason we're conditioned to hold on to it in a way. I don't know. That's just a weird dynamic because just you don't see with female directed toys, and part of that could just be patriarchy, but you don't see that with My Little Pony or Care Bear or whatever.
I don't know that this is. I don't know if it was purely cynical, but we got a Gem movie, but it was fucking awful. But like Gem, the TV show, I've watched it recently, and I'm like, this is far superior to the Transformers show. Like it's good.
It was cool.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder, and I like Aaron, I have to be cautious when wading into gender dynamics, but I do wonder if because I mean I'm sure we've all had conversations with our respective partners about how we engage with this stuff, like specifically like Transformers, nostalgia, and the connection of it. And I've had some conversations with my wife, and I think sometimes she doesn't necessarily engage with nostalgia the same way that I do, and the way she breaks it down for me that makes me understand is like, well, I'm nostalgic for connections with people. I don't necessarily have connections to stuff. Whereas like, she is sometimes even challenged to name what her favorite movie is. I don't know if she has a favorite movie or a favorite TV show. It's just entertainment that just kind of, it's something you engage in, but not necessarily something that you imprint on and connect to. Mm-hmm. And again, sticking my neck out here, I don't know if it's a guy thing. I don't know if it's an older guy thing, like our particular generation, but that's kind of some of the dynamic that I run into in my particular household.
I think it's
we invite
social
all
conditioning.
Female listeners and Patreon followers to get in touch.
And I would also wonder, like, if there's something like there is a social dynamic, but like it's not. Like one of our followers on Twitter talked about how she had to make a deal with her mother to go see the Transformers movie, and the trade-off was she would never bring up Transformers again.
Oh, Jesus.
And like, so I think some of it may have just been it's not valued for little girls to be interested in stuff outside of like at some portion of like outside of like, well, that's not really what girls do.
Well, right. Your job is to learn how to have children and take care of a family.
To some extent.
Right. Again, I think it is social conditioning. But which also just, and I know we're probably way off topic, but it just is interesting to come back to the modern day and think about the diversity of the Transformers audience today.
Exactly.
The female audience is probably 25%, if not more, for the current media and creative that comes out.
And so much, and good for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and so much contemporary material is arguably, quote unquote, for them. It's for everybody, and I think that's great.
And here we go. It's the five white guys talking about stuff
There's always an asterisk where it's like we don't necessarily know. It's all that's like
there's nothing wrong with talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. So
In the real world.
So I didn't have a proper real world for this one. So basically, we're just talking about some information about our man Ron Friedman. Like I said, he's just turned 90 years old on August 1st.
Happy birthday, Jesus!
He looks
less than a
pretty
month ago.
great and is pretty there for 90. And I'm like, so he Mr. Friedman attended Carnegie Mellon University, where he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in architecture.
I recall him saying that. I brought up when Mike and I interviewed him, his original Betty Boop cartoon. There was a lot of really cool architecture backgrounds and things that he did from, like, I don't know he personally, but he would take credit for design, like helping design the backgrounds. And there was just a lot of really cool architectural drawings that were done in that piece.
Kind of makes sense as to why he was so specific about the architecture of the Hall of Heroes.
Sure. Yeah.
Friedman has written more than 700 hours of live episodes for television, including The Andy Griffith Show, Bewitched, Gilligan's Island, All in the Family, The Odd Couple, Happy Days, and That's My Mama, which was something I was not familiar with. I looked it up. That last was a short-lived mid-'70s show about an African-American barber in Washington, D.C., who had a mother that wanted him to settle down with a nice wife.
I'm just...
That's my mama.
Loving picturing Friedman as the white guy in the writing room leading. Yeah.
Obviously, I think he's written something like also 42 feature films. It's pretty crazy. Like, he's had a wild career. Obviously, he worked on G.I. Joe and Transformers in animation, as well as the Stan Lee on numerous Marvel animation projects, including Iron Man and the Marvel Action Marvel Action Hour. I love this.
He won't let you forget that he is best buddies with Stan Lee.
He does like...
Yeah, I was going to say, and Marvel Action Hour. That's like the first thing out of his mouth after Transformers. He's like, and I invented the Marvel Action
Honestly,
Hour.
they
It's
are
like,
cut from the same cloth. Like,
Absolutely.
When you hear them in interviews, they have some similar oddball attributes.
And we mentioned this a bit earlier. The second thing out of his mouth will be a story where Friedman was featured twice on Gilbert Gottfried's audio podcast and on Mark Evanier? I don't know that video podcast. Anyway, in September, cementing his reputation as one of the industry's most compelling raconteurs. His anecdote, told to Gottfried on their first podcast, is about Lucille Ball telling him about her then-husband, Desi Arnaz, pulling a gun on Orson Welles and threatening to kill him if he did not deliver a long-promised script for The Fountain of Youth in 1956. Which remains particularly astonishing.
it's a great story, but I was getting really itchy when he told that story at TFCon Toronto in a panel room full of children.
You can't put a leash on that dog.
Or you can. It's just going to constantly pull away from you and try to attack a squirrel. I think I'm just describing my dog, actually.
That's it. That's all I had.
Well, I guess, in typical episodes at this point, we would rate the scheme. I don't even know how you do that in this circumstance. But
well, do we rate Ron Friedman's scheme? Maybe Ron Friedman's scheme. In that case, I'd give it a 10.
10 out of 10.
I don't know. Wouldn't change a thing.
Okay, yeah, there is a scheme. The schemes that came through into the final movie. So that bit, the bits that were there in the final movie, you can rate those schemes because they went through to the end.
Yeah.
The rest of it is just Ron Friedman making money as a day job, writing a load of.
It's true, like
Whatever.
you said, Mike. The movie cuts all the fat. Like it takes the stuff. Like
It
basically
does,
in this original script, you basically have the attack on Autobot City. You have the second attack on Autobot City, and then you have you meet the Junkions, and then you have the attack on Unicron, and that all goes through. It's just they take the best of it, which is what you should do.
And
That's the point.
Ron Friedman from this invented Unicron. And Unicron has transcended now all types of media. We've got toys of him now and everything else. So for me, the scheme is the idea of a Unicron that is bigger than the Transformers. So from that point, it's a 10 out of 10 for the entity.
Yeah.
Beyond
But
good,
nothing
beyond
else.
evil.
The and we do make fun of Ron Friedman a lot on this show, but Flint Dilley said this when we had the opportunity to interview, and we have to remember that as wacky as all of this is, that was the job. That was the job to do, was to get some shit on paper, and with the full knowledge, I assume, that from Ron Friedman's perspective, that it would be refined.
Yeah,
There would be
absolutely.
drafts, and
Yes.
and it was just going to change over time. So it's easy to mock this, but I'm positive that pick your favorite movie and find the original script of it, and you're going to find anything like problematic elements, whether from whatever it is, like just general wackiness.
Back to the Future refrigerator.
Right.
All right, well, great. Hey, why don't we do some plugs? Mike, what would you like to shout out?
Oh, just if you like this and you like listening to me, listen to my show, the Mike Seibert Radio Podcast. And again, coming up after this episode of APDC, head on over to my show and check out my upcoming in the past, in the future, in the present, my interview with Jim Sorensen, where I'm going to kind of get into the story of how this entire panel presentation came to be, like going through Flint's garage and finding the script and kind of getting into the minutia of that, kind of like, I guess I'm calling it beyond your wildest imagination. So that's going to be available the day after this podcast drops. So if you're listening on a Sunday, check out my show on Monday, or go to my live stream where it's or my YouTube page where it's already happened, but hasn't happened for me yet at this moment in present time, because I'm a multi-dimensional we are in the multiverse of madness. It's very crazy. But if you want to keep up with my shenanigans, you can follow me on all the social medias. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Pretty active on equally, so that's all at Mike Seibert Radio, and the spelling on that is Seibert, just the way that it sounds. And it's always great kicking it with you guys. Aaron, Ryan, Caleb, thank you for having me, and Alex, it was great meeting you. It was great kicking it with you. We definitely got to do something like this again, because this was an absolute blast.
Yeah, it was a whole
Sure
lot
was.
of fun. Hey, Alexis, what would you like to pump up?
I've got nothing really. I'm just here for the cheer, here for the Snake Fighting Black. No, what I will say is, and it is a bit of a shout out again to, I wouldn't have been at this TFCon if I hadn't got a lift up there with Catch, who has a YouTube channel, Mauricio Cafiero, and I'll send you the link to that, where he does some absolutely fantastic stop motion Transformers episodes on there. So I will. That's my shout out.
Cool.
And if
Check
you
it
want to
out.
see somebody being an asshole in the Greek islands, go
An asshole. I don't know why I said
Okay,
that. Just
wow.
because you're there.
Triggering.
That's why you're the asshole.
I did think of this. I was talking to West about this, and I'm like, look at this fucking guy thinking he's better than me. But I'm like,
And if
it's
you want to
also
check me out on social media, it's Captain Alexis, and you can see me kind of arseholing it around the
great stuff.
Mediterranean,
Or other things.
enjoying some octopus.
No,
Oh, man,
I
that
love your little video streams.
Me too.
You
I like
do
your
a lot of
walks.
short video. Yeah,
Yeah, your
there's
walks
Oh,
are
yeah, yeah,
There's
fantastic.
good photography. There's good musings.
I was very jealous of your wife's serving of mussels that you had at the restaurant. I saw that I'm like, oh man, I love mussels.
You're like, nah, I really hate him.
Fuck that motherfucker.
Yeah, so much crudité.
That English bastard coming along here, shoving his muscles down our throat.
All right, well, with that, if you'd like to support our show, we invite you to check out our Patreon page. There's many levels of support, some that we didn't even know existed that maybe we'll talk about in the next episode. But there's a wide variety of benefits. You can find us at patreon.com/APODcast, or check out our store at autopoddecepticast.com/store. And finally, you can buy us a drink. What's that all about, Ryan?
Hey, if you want to buy us a drink, you can buy us a drink. Give $5 to our PayPal at APODcast. Let me know what kind of drink you'd like to have on the show, why you like it, maybe a recipe. Do you want me to freewheel it? Do you want me to shout out your name? Anything else? And I will have that on the show. You can buy us a drink. And maybe in our next episode, we will feature a drink from this program with a special guest yet to be named, who also was on this show.
If you want a dumpster podcast and your credit don't stink, then reach inside your wallet now and buy us a drink.
There it is.
Oh, I'm glad that happened.
I have caught myself humming that throughout the house, and like I'll be like, "What is that?" Like, da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. I'm like, never mind. Don't worry about
What's that catchy ragtime tune?
Additionally, feel free to give us a review, stars, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play. You can hook up with us virtually on the Patreon, as well as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're not as good at keeping up as Mike Seibert is on all these platforms.
Mostly
but
Twitter.
You'll find us at APODcast. And show notes, materials, autopoddecepticast.com. Thank you to Mike and Alexis.
Thanks for being on, guys. This was great.
Appreciate it.
Good
Cheers,
night.
guys, from buttons.
it. Absolutely.
Bye.
Make a choice.
Bye,
See you
bye,
later.
bye.
Oh, God. All right. Good
We did
job,
it.
guys.
Woo.
We made it.
We did
Not, hang on, 10,
So-
11, 12, 1. 4 hours.
4 hours.
4 hours.
That's not a
It's
record.
two-parter, right?
Yeah.
Bro Cells is the sponsor of Autopod Decepticast. Yes, 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 yes.